Government has identified infrastructure as a key area to propel Uganda's development and the dream to become a middle state, that is income. Like in other countries, Uganda's expenditure that is on public infrastructure is at about 17% of the budget of Uganda. And this morning, to explore this topic with me in the studios are experts, that is from CoST Uganda and CoST International. And from CoST Uganda, we have Enock Nimpamya. Good morning, Enock.
Good morning, brother.
And welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here.
And of course, from CoST International, I'm having Christiaan Proof. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah.
Well, Enock, to begin with, when we talk about construction in this country, one would wonder what is CoST. All we are saying is cost in construction. What is CoST?
CoST stands for Construction Sector Transparency Initiative, and it is a tripartite arrangement that brings different stakeholders together. It brings the government sector, the private sector, and the civil society together. Like for the case of Uganda CoST, the government of Uganda is represented by UNRWA on the board, and it is actually UNRWA which applied CoST International for Uganda to join the CoST fraternity, because CoST is international and it operates in different countries. So we have UNRWA on board, we have the Directorate of Ethics and Integrity, represented by the director himself. We have the Assistant Commissioner, Office of the Prime Minister, J.G. Bakarakwira. We have Ministry of Works and Transport as the champion for CoST. Then we have the Ministry of Finance, but of course as an observer. So what does CoST really stand for? We seek to deepen and enhance transparency and accountability in the construction sector, the entire value chain of construction sector. And of course, what is our ultimate goal? Our ultimate net objective is to ensure that there is value for money in the construction sector. There are better quality products such as roads, and of course, which will ultimately lead to better lives. So CoST, in its framework, is built or is anchored on 3 core features, actually 4. One is assurance process. The second one is disclosure of information. And the third one is the multi-stakeholder engagement. And the other one has to do with assurance process and its entire other components. Then you realize that ever since CoST started, we've registered significant milestones in the construction sector. And I hope when we get to that, I will be able to provide.
Well, construction sector is a bit broad, but I want us to look specifically at what the layman would see very first, which are roads. What are some of your key issues that you're looking at in the road construction sector?
Actually, I need to put clarity to this, that construction sector transparency initiative does not focus on the roads as per se. We focus on all the construction as a sector, including roads, bridges, railways, airports, and other aspects of construction. But to get back to your question, with respect to the roads, there are of course an array of issues that we've witnessed, and we hope of course with time this will be overcome. Some of them have to do with the policy. There are issues within the policy. There are issues to do with the institutional capacity. There are issues to do with the quality of the roads themselves. There are issues to do with the community, especially aspects of the compensation for the community. There are issues to do with funding, who funds which project, and is this funding reasonable? Is it tied with certain conditionalities, and many other aspects. Yeah.
There are a couple of issues like you've stated them, but what is the outstanding of all these issues that are being raised when we talk of roads in particular?
Yeah, the key outstanding issue is that the aspect of quality control and quality assurance is largely at the lower end. True, we have quality control in most of the road construction projects, quality assurance in most of the construction projects, but is it up to the international standard or up to the standard that we can all be proud of? That becomes an issue. Because you'll find that there is a road that has a very good design, a road has a very good site engineer or contractor, but you find that the supervising arm or the component of a road is largely an issue. So given that, we, of course, as CoST say
that you can see on our screen, on your screen, wherever you are, that is some of the roads that we are talking about. Quality, as he's trying to explain challenges that are being faced, most outstanding here.
So the aspects of quality control become so paramount that you need a serious supervising engineer to ensure that quality is taken care of. Otherwise, even if you had a perfect road design, a perfect contractor, without a perfect road supervisor, then I can tell you, you'll end up having a poor product in the name of the road. Then the other aspect has to do with procurement entities really disclose information, because the aspect of disclosure of information in Uganda is like a new phenomenon. They are not used to disclosing information outside, say, PPDA, outside, say, Auditor General, outside the IGG. So they are not used to that. So, but we are saying, can you disclose this information? And which information are we talking about? The information we are talking about is what we call project information.
Project information.
Project information, such as costs, the state of the start dates and the end dates, aspects to do with cost variations, aspects to do with the lifespan of the project, and quite among many more.
Well, Enock, given Uganda's position and where we are standing here, that brings me to Christiaan, who is the board chairman of CoST. Right. What are some of the experiences that Uganda we can borrow from other countries?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this program and giving us an opportunity to say a few things about CoST. We're obviously very pleased with the developments of the CoST program in Uganda, and we stand ready as the central secretariat to provide whatever help we can. And one of the things is indeed, as you say, what are the experiences of other countries? Well, CoST is currently being implemented in about 15 countries, or a few more than that, all over the globe. And we are now about 5 years old, so some of these lessons have started to come out. And we have a very active dialogue with our colleagues and friends in Uganda about what are these elements and how can we make sure that they're incorporated in the approach that is being used in Uganda. Now, the first item, and it sounds very straightforward, or maybe it sounds very simple, is political will. It is very important that we deal with a set of people, which is usually government, but also private sector and civil society, who are keen to see infrastructure being put into place in a better way. More efficient, less cost, less time for completion, and no corruption. And that political will is indeed critical. And we're delighted that in Uganda we have the Minister of Public Works and Transport, who has become the so-called champion and who will actually actively make sure that this program is being implemented in all its forms. The other part that is very important is the legal framework. In other words, the need or the obligation to make information available in a way that it is understandable to everybody, including the man in the street who is confronted with some of these products that we're talked about, is very important, but it needs to be legally enshrined. There has to be a law, there has to be a requirement that all that information is indeed made available. And there is a question in Uganda about the degree at which this is currently made available and the time period over which it's being made available. So these are changes that I think can be incorporated and should make this a lot better program based on the experience of other countries. Last but not least, training people, capacity building. You highlighted the point about people who are concerned about the roads. We need to provide people with a basic understanding of how roads are being built, what they should look for, what are the problems that they should be looking for, and how can they convey them to the parties at hand that something is wrong. So we need a well-educated, in this sense, educated in terms of what they should be looking for in infrastructure, that will help this dialogue and will hopefully bring these three groups that we talked about, government, private sector, and civil society, closer together in terms of providing a better product for everybody, and particularly for the nation.
Well, in your observation, are we on the right track as Uganda towards these yardsticks as you've set?
Yes, I think, as I said, I'm optimistic about the degree of political will that I see. But translating that political will into action, as you know, is always a difficult point. So, and that is not unique to Uganda. I mean, every country has that. But I think that was one of the reasons I was here, to see to what extent we can help, to what extent the program needs additional support. And I'm optimistic that, given what I've heard, this is a new initiative. But let's be realistic. These things take a certain amount of time to get and show results. So we need to be patient, but at the same time, I think we need to keep our eye on the ball and make sure that some of these basic approaches are being implemented.
Enock, you happen to have carried out a research and come up with a report. What are some of the key findings on the current situation regarding your findings in the report?
Yeah, so far so good. There were good aspects with respect to the projects that we monitored. We monitored a couple of different projects under KCCA, and some projects under UNRWA, and some under the local government like Wakiso. You've heard of this road, Makinde, Savagao, and quite many more. But what are those key aspects that we would recommend to the government and to the public that should be taken care of? First of all, we as CoST, we have what we call Infrastructure Data Standards, IDS. This is a standard or a canon that is internationally recognized. Once when replicated or applied in the construction sector, you will not have aspects to do with collusion, aspects to do with shoddy work, aspects to do with poor quality work, aspects to do with corruption. You will have enhanced transparency at the end of the day and value for money. So there is a need really for the government of Uganda to adopt the IDS standard to be mainstreamed across its systems. Of course, Uganda is the government.
Briefly, can you give us what these standards are, the IDS standards?
The IDS standards, of course,
what they contain, briefly.
Yeah, the contents, they require you to disclose information proactively and reactively.
Okay.
So that, for example, in most of these road constructions that you've managed to see across the country, have you ever seen a signpost that indicates this road project costs this amount of money?
No. You see duration, the contractor,
then
the
why do
subcontractor?
you leave the cost? Indicate the cost, because the moment you hide the cost, it's like you're creating a room for suspicion. How much did this project? Because a common person, once they say this is 18 billions, he or she will look at it as a lot or colossal sums of money. And yet in the actual practice, if you take considerations of the aspects like design, the aspects to do with the construction itself, or the value chain of that very road, you realize that that is less money. But for you, the moment you don't indicate it, you are creating room for suspicion. So disclosure of information like proactively and reactively. Then the other aspects have to do with how you access to information. Now, access to information is such that you should allow the public be able to access the information that is on your site. So, because this becomes important in the sense that you will have cleared your other side. But if you don't do that, then people will be like, didn't they eat our money? Oftentimes you've heard that a layer of a road was eaten by some engineers. Practically, that is impossible. Nobody can eat a layer of a road if you know construction very well. But we've seen
people on completed roads coming up to look at the content of a road, the layers, and there are reports that maybe the roads we are having, there is a layer missing.
No, you can't have a complete layer missing. You can have issues to do with the mixture.
Okay, it's substandard.
Yeah, it is
what
substandard.
comes out is the road is substandard. An element of corruption was
enormous.
enormous.
But for you to say that a layer of a road was eaten is practically impossible if it comes to construction. Then the other aspects that we found in our report have to do with compensation of the communities. Of course, the government needs really to mount massive awareness campaign to the citizens of the country. Could you tell them the benefits of what the road project brings to the economic development or socio-economic development of a given community? So the communities seem not to be aware. They see a grader being paraded before a site, and construction is commencing. They don't know what is happening. So that's why you usually see some communities rise up in arms and stone the contractors, the engineers. Why? Because they are not aware that this road is ultimately meant to benefit them as the citizens. So in our report, we realized that there is a limited intent from the side of government to inform the public about the benefits of some of the construction projects. I can give you the best case study in Wakiso.
Yes.
Makinde Sabagawa Road. It is under the local government. Can you imagine that the communities, upon being sensitized on the benefits of the road project, they all accepted to give right of way, to give free land to allow construction to go on at no cost. But you go and look at other agencies, has had significant issues to do with compensations. You find a road section, there is a curve, or they have skipped a certain section because a certain individual has refused to sell off his part of land or to give it away. So these are the issues. But if the person was informed about the net economic gains of what this project offers to the country, to the macro economy and the micro economy, that becomes paramount. Then the other aspect, of course, is that oftentimes the Ministry of Works does not provide technical support to the local government. Local governments in themselves are independent entities. They have their own engineers. They have their budgets, right? But there is that money that comes from the central government. I think we are together. So they give the whole workload to the engineer and the supervising team. Then they relegate their function.
That is decentralization. And
yes, it's decentralization.
It
is extending the services, but you know how the roads are constructed at the local government level. So if the Ministry of Works can at one time get some little moment and get to the sites, once in a while, cut us a call, like a visit to a certain project, and they say, no, here what we are doing is you could do better here. It becomes paramount. Otherwise, leaving it to some local governments whose capacity is limited, because we have an issue to do with capacity, becomes challenging. At the end of the day, you have poor road designs. Then, of course, the procurement entities should look at assurance process that we usually subject to different construction projects as an independent process. Because once you look at it as an independent process, a process that will bring key issues, key results, and recommendations, then that becomes important. But the moment you think, no, we have IGG, we have Auditor General, we have Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, then why should we be subjected to the assurance process? Then it becomes tricky.
So those are some of the key findings. And have you made a clear point of action after this report has been released?
Yeah, after this report has been released, there are clear points of actions have been made. Like last night, we had a dinner with our champion, the Minister for Works and Transport, and we are ready to expedite different processes and key recommendations that have been made. We were also able to meet the Office of the Prime Minister yesterday, and we met the Office of the President. They are all committed, seeing that these recommendations that we've made are taken into consideration. Yeah.
Christiaan.
Yes.
What value does CoST bring to the construction sector in Uganda?
Well, the value is basically what I call an added value. I mean, obviously in Uganda there are certain institutions that have been charged with the preparation and the procurement and then the subsequent implementation of infrastructure projects. But there are a few elements that in that process that we feel collectively can be improved upon. First of all, the data that is being disclosed, anyway, the information that is being made available. What the studies that have been conducted here have shown is that only a certain part of what procuring entities need to disclose, information that they need to make available, is not being made available. So it's simply a matter of asking current procuring entities, ministries, departments, to do a better job in putting all the information out there. Then I think there is some additional information that people need to have in order to make a real assessment of what the projects are doing, whether they're actually achieving their targets and their objectives. That can be done relatively quickly, but that's a value added that CoST will bring to this. Thirdly, so far most of the monitoring, and that applies to all countries, including Uganda, most of the attention of the monitoring and evaluation is being focused on the procurement part, because procurement is where, as we say, the rubber meets the road. In other words, this is where the money is being dispensed. This is an area where there's a lot of opportunities for misunderstandings, there's opportunities for corruption, so most of the attention is focused there. Our research has shown that it is equal importance to go downstream from there. You need to monitor the implementation of the projects, all the issues that you just mentioned about road construction. Frequently, those get far less attention than the ones that are focused on the procurement process itself. That's another element that CoST brings to existing arrangement, but sort of makes it a broader, more comprehensive approach. Another important part is this so-called multi-stakeholder group. What CoST does is it changes the way in which the debate takes place between government, private sector, and civil society, or society at large.
How does it change that?
Well, as you know, there's always tension here. People distrust each other. The people who are receiving the final product they don't trust the contractor to have done the right way. The government distrusts the contractor accuses the government of not being paid on time. In other words, it's a very confrontational relationship. What CoST does is bring these people together in one grouping and say it is to the benefit of everybody that we have all information available, and then we can really judge who needs to take action on what. And not everything is corruption. As a matter of fact, our data show that a large proportion of it is not corruption, it's mismanagement, it's waste. These are things that don't need to be going through an audit, where they don't need to be prosecuted. These are issues that can be discussed within that group, and that is a completely different relationship. So CoST tries to bring that out and make sure that it's a collective action, rather than being a process whereby people are one is criticizing the other, and in the final analysis, nobody really knows what's going on. So these are some of the major headlines that the new things that CoST will bring to an already existing system like in Uganda.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you on this show.
Thank you.
As we look at betterment of the construction industry in Uganda, where CoST brings all stakeholders on board, and they've come up with reports good enough, like Enock put it, that there's already been enough engagement with people that are concerned to improve the construction industry or sector in this country. Well, from me and the rest of the team, up next is Business Today for God and my country, and may the good Lord bless Uganda. Good morning.